Wingin It Wednesday, brought to you by LABI, our state's Chamber of Commerce, defending free enterprise since 1974.
7:12. Welcome into Wingin It Wednesday. Our three panelists all here. Warren Cottle, Stafford Barnett, and Miss Carol Ross down there on the end. So yesterday during the Ross Report, I jumped in and kind of told Carol what I saw, what I heard, talked to some people after, kind of got their feeling about this whole thing, and everyone who was there. And, you know, it ended up feeling a lot like a rally because everyone was really excited for him to be in Lafayette. I think everyone, most of the people, I won't say everyone, seem to have a little bit of a stake in the game when it comes to educational institutions or healthcare, other things like that. Carol, we'll start with you on this today. Where are we now today that we weren't before this speech happened? Any surprises?
Jonnie Laurel. That's about how far away they are. Actually, I think the location of the speech was a metaphor for where the legislature and the governor are, how far apart they are in terms of where they're going. I hope they do come together, but we've heard these promises before, and so it's a little hard not to be cynical about these same old promises and how we have to work together and we need to come common ground and that sort of thing. And when the governor tells the legislators that they have to be more amenable to his ideas, what he forgets is they have constituents too. And their constituents are telling them something totally different. And what we've seen is even if they let's say they raise that half penny, the half penny will not keep up with the amount of spending that they've been doing. Their spending has outpaced whatever money they have raised. Because remember, during his tenure in just 2.5 years, he's raised about $2 billion in taxes and fees. And it still hasn't kept up with the way they're spending, the rate of spending. So I think, seriously, they really do need to look at how they're spending our money. How wisely are they investing our taxpayer dollars? Where is that money going? I think he did choose Lafayette for the other reason that they needed to have a big win in this area in terms of economic development. So that CGI announcement, I think part of the reason that he came here was because of that. And also, I think he knew he'd have a friendly audience with the number of state offices, state buildings, healthcare, education, et cetera, that are here. So I hope it's not continuing to be a metaphor for how far apart they are ideologically, because they really need to get some solutions. 9 sessions since he's been governor, 3 of them regular and 6 special sessions right now. And nothing substantive. I mean, people don't see a substantive change in the way we do business. And that's what we need to have. Because no matter how much more money they raise, they will always outspend it.
All right, Warren. So, excuse me. One of the things I want to ask about is it seems like where we reached a crossroads the last time we heard there was a deal was the fact that the Congressional Black Caucus was not on board with the sales tax change. And so now, not only is the governor having to convince Republicans to come over to his side, he's going to have to, convince this delegation as well that the sales tax is the answer.
Well, first thing we got to understand is that this crisis that we're in now is nothing new. It's the same damned old shell game that they've been playing over and over and over and over and over again. The question was posed that is 2 weeks enough to solve this problem, the depth of this problem? Mm-hmm. Hell yes, 24 hours is enough to solve this problem. If you got people up there who want to sit down and look at the hard facts and figure out what we're going to do. But what we've done over and over and over is to stiff the working people of this state every chance they get to turn around, to grow government, to give more money away, to issue out contracts and such stuff to their friends and all of that, and then the whole state suffers for it. And we see this every year, every 2 years or whatever. It's been going on ever since I've been here, since 1981. And to me, there's nothing new. Bobby Jindal came in. He was supposed to be this golden boy that could do this, that, and other. And the biggest mess that ever was. And John Bell Edwards was a voting part of that mess. He voted for 6 or 8 of those budgets. And now he claims that, that's where the problem was. Well, you're damn right that's where the problem was. Jay Darden says, well, you show us where to cut. Okay, Darden, lay out the budget. Lay out those contracts. I'll show you where we can cut. We've got so many things in here where we can just sit there and throw a dart at the board and where to cut. I mean, it's all over the place. But none of them want to do it. They always want to turn around and say, our problems are your fault. They're the ones who created the problem. It's their problem, but then they turn around and say it's our fault, and you just send us back up there and we'll solve it.
Stafford, so, he did bring up contracts, and another plan that was kind of floating around is one of these across the board. Would it even take 10%? That's kind of been the number that's been thrown around, but is there an easier fix like that than targeting certain areas?
Yeah, form a constitutional convention, wipe the slate clean, and start from the beginning, which is what we should be doing. A couple of things. So this has been my favorite session ever. So
for the entertainment value,
absolutely.
Or for the value
and
to
listen,
taxpayers?
If Stuart Bishop is listening, I want you to know, buddy, I got your back. There are some things in life worth fighting for, and you may be embarrassed by what happened, and you may be cowering a little bit. Walk tall and be proud, brother, because some things are worth throwing a fist for. So I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. You got my vote. So why are we here, right? Why do we keep getting here? The reason we keep getting here is we gave line item veto power to the governor years ago. And because of that, the governor has got a lot of power. Then we turn around and we put Jindal in office for a long time, who implements these Grover Norquist policies that destroyed Kansas and have turned around and really wrecked us. Now, the governor does hold some fault here, and I believe that while he is a good governor, he's bad at being a politician. I think that calling names, throwing stuff at Taylor Barra, and all this back and forth is not good. And look, that canned line from Taylor Barra was probably one of the worst old people Facebook jokes I've ever heard in my life. It was absolutely terrible. But I get it. These guys are at each other's throats, and at the same time, something's got to be done. And I've said it. I'm like a broken record here. We send these people to do the hard stuff, not the easy things. Now, Carol said that our rate of spending has not kept up with, or has not continued to decrease. Well, the tax, and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but the tax that they're asking to keep is not a new tax as much as it is maintaining the temporary half-cent sales tax that they put in place years ago. Is that correct? Or is it a new half-cent?
They put in a full penny and said it was going to be temporary.
That's right. And now they're asking for
now
a half
they're cutting back and saying it's a cut. We're going to save you a half cent,
so,
and we're going to make it permanent.
So what I want to say is, though, that I don't agree with your theory that our rate of spending is not keeping up with our rate of revenue.
The rate of spending is outpacing the revenue. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So what I'm saying is I don't agree with that. Okay. I'd be bad at saying it, but I just don't agree with it.
Whatever.
And what I'm saying is we've got ourselves in this situation because we've constantly constitutionally protected all this funding because it was getting raided because we were giving too much money away. It's time for us to take a step back and go, our system is broken. Our sales taxes are too high. We give away too much of the revenue that we take in for corporate interests, for whatever they are, for it may sound like Warren on this, for good old school buddy stuff, right? But the reality is it's broken, and we got to get back to a system that makes sense. And my opinion is that doing it through consumption taxes, sales taxes, is part of the solution, but it shouldn't be the only solution, right? Let's start lowering the homestead exemption over the next decade, right? $75,000 a year first home not being taxed. Let's knock off $10,000 a year for the next decade until we can make that make sense again, right?
Warren?
I just want to make one comment that you were talking about Stuart Bishop, and you were happy that he's willing to throw a fist. Well, I believe that Stuart said he did not throw a fist.
He didn't.
He was punched, and he bowed out of the contest.
The other guy has kind of a rep, blowing up at least once a session.
Listen, I heard he threw a verbal fist. Okay,
a verbal fist. I like that.
Hey, listen, if what I heard he said is what he actually said, then Stuart, I got your back, brother.
Carol.
Yeah, and Stuart is a total gentleman. I mean,
He's a phenomenal guy.
So mild-mannered that would not, if somebody came after him and he didn't throw a punch, that would make sense. I mean, he is such a good guy. But anyway, when you look at the rate of growth of government as opposed to the rate of growth in the private sector, the GDP, versus the growth in government, you will see we are far outspending what our growth will be. And no matter how much money we give them, they will continue to outspend it. Because they're politicians who buy votes with our tax dollars.
And I agree with what you're saying, but I think when we look at metrics, we need to look at all of them, right? And one of the problems that we have is that we collect taxes at a local level and then we credit it at a state level because the system is broken. We need to stop sending all this money to the state, keep the money in the communities, and let the communities decide their own future, like so many other successful places have done.
That's exactly right. But you ask these legislators to give up power. You're asking a governor, one of the most powerful in the country, to give up power, and that is a real situation. And you can do all the numbers you want. You cannot take the personal, private dealing out of it because they're human beings, and they
100%.
Couldn't the Constitutional Convention take that power away?
Yes.
Well, if they focus on specific things, I think yes. Several articles that they talked about, but a Constitutional Convention is also fraught with danger because you have no idea where it's going to go, and it could go to maybe lowering the number of votes they need to raise taxes, which they need a 2/3 vote now. Is it 2/3? Yeah, it's 2/3. 2/3. And so they might take away term limits.
It would just have to be focused, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm
right,
saying very focused, and you'd have to be careful very careful, because even if you look, they had the high hopes in the 72 convention, and look what happened there, and we're still amending that Constitution.
All right, Mr. Cottle, wrap this one up for us, buddy.
It does not have to be focused. It needs to be wide open, and let those people who elected delegates there come up with a constitution that the citizens of this state have a chance to vote on.
Right. You're home.
And, sorry, last point. The delegates who help write that Constitution aren't necessarily our elected representatives, right? So I think it's important to note that when we put these delegates together to help write that it's not people who have been in office for the past 20 years going and saying,
well, if they're going to be elected.
Yeah,
so let me tell you something.
Correct.
The power structure
so then they have
will have its way.
But the dangers of it going negatively, that coin has two sides. It has the same dangers of it going positively. We could be really scared of it going really well too, right? Yes, they could do some things that we don't think of it.
I'm sorry.
But does that make
Welcome
sense?
to the state of Louisiana.
Our fears of it going one way.
Okay,
it could also go the other. So we couldn't be
said,
afraid of positive things happening, right?
I know, but then you like earlier today, you said old people. You gonna be old one day too, boo.
I feel old. I feel old right now.
Wingin' It Wednesday, you're home for verbal punches every.
By the way, they could do it statutorily in a lot of cases. They say no, but they could do it statutorily, and they could do things like the checkbook, do an amendment to the Constitution. Yeah. We got a checkbook. You vote on that. Open transparency. That would go a long way to letting people know how their money's being wasted.
All right, we need to get to a break here. We're going to talk about the big CGI announcement, maybe the only bright spot some people heard in yesterday's address, but it could mean 400, or it will mean 400 more jobs here in Acadiana. Stay with us. LABI's CEO, Stephen Wagasback, joining us on the phone this morning. The special session getting underway yesterday, and some pretty rough economic news for our area. Good morning, Stephen. What's going on?
Hey, good morning.
We see each and every day neighbors, friends, family members, a lot of them still underemployed, even if they have a job. But the economic news we got this week, not so good for our area.
Yeah, unfortunately, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis put out a report, and it said that Louisiana is one of only 8 states to have a reduction in real personal income from the previous year, and Lafayette is one of the toughest areas in the state, unfortunately. 7.5% personal income down this year from last year. That means working families, small businesses taking in less this year than last year, and that is not a sign we need as we go into a tough stretch and a tough special session.
Okay, so from your point of view, how do we move forward in our area to maybe get some good news?
Well, the first thing we do is do no harm this special session. Legislators are going back in to try to settle some of the problems government has, and we can't just have them put those problems on the backs of taxpayers. And that's what I'm most worried about. So we'll be working in the Capitol the next 2 weeks, making sure whatever they do to figure out how to get this budget right, they don't just put more obstacles for working families and small businesses trying to compete in a tough economy.
LABI CEO Stephen Wagasback, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, a proud sponsor of Wingin' It Wednesday on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by LABI. Find out how they help job creators at labi.org.
All right, 7:30 now at News Talk 96.5 KPEL. We bring the conversation each and every morning. What's going on? Good morning to our panelists. Everyone's here, by the way, today, which is cool, which we like. All right, let's talk about a bright point in the governor's address yesterday, talking about CGI, who had initially had had committed to bringing 400 jobs earlier this year. They hired their 400th person. And then just yesterday, the big announcement was made that they've committed to being in the state in Acadiana for another 3 years and hiring another 400 people, bringing the total in Lafayette to 800 employees. Warren?
That's very good. Now.
But
what kind of tax concessions and such stuff, special treatment do they get? How much rent do they pay on that multi-thousand square foot building that they have?
$1 a year.
$1 a year. Hey, listen to me. $1 a year. Don't y'all be talking, kids, in class now.
You were talking a minute ago.
Well, yeah, we weren't on the air. You were trying to straighten out Stafford then.
Warren, you're hilarious.
Seriously.
Okay.
This company, as I understand, gets some extremely generous tax concessions and some extremely generous contracts with local governments, state governments, and other governments. And I think it was either them or part of them or something. They had some relationship with the group that did the Obamacare website for a few $1 billion or whatever, that all of these IT specialists said that should have been done for probably $1 million.
Let me ask you this, though, because you do bring up the concessions and the tax, and I'm not sure what the number is. I'm sure it's something because it's a deal with the state. But at what level does it make sense for the state to bring that many jobs?
That is a good question. You know, what do you invest in that to get jobs there and such stuff as that? But on the other hand, you know, how many contracts and such stuff do they get? Are those lucrative contracts? Does anybody see them? We don't know. You know, I do know this, that after World War II is that the South had cheap energy. We had TVA, we had all that. We had a warmer climate than the machine shops and such stuff up in Michigan and Ohio and such stuff. Tennessee had a governor who actually flew to those companies up there and talked to the chairmen of the board to entice them to come down. And if you go through the South now, that migration came from what is now called the Rust Belt, but then it's now migrated a little bit further. It's now going south and going overseas. So, you know, we've always made investments in those kind of things. But that's a $64 question. What do they get? Does anybody know?
Stafford, I want to start there with the same question I asked Warren. Is there a level? You know, I hate to go back to all these other things we've talked about ad nauseum, but like the Saints, for example. It depends on what data point you're looking at. The Saints don't have a terrible, they don't have hundreds of employees. You know, I mean, you have your staff, you have maybe a couple hundred. I mean, but it's not 800. And when you can kind of compare the two, is there a worthwhile medium for what a state should invest if they're bringing that many jobs?
Absolutely. You look at a total return on investment. And when you look at the Saints, you look at what do they do to the hotels, right? And what kind of special taxes we have on the hotels in New Orleans. Look, a couple of things. We've given tax incentives to companies for 100 years here, right? We've done it especially to oil, right? And what we learned in the 80s is that when oil collapsed, which we've learned here again recently, that having too many of your eggs in one basket is bad for an economy. It's bad for a business, right? If you're a business, if you're an industrial retail, right, where you sell stuff to customers, and more than 30% of your business is from your top 10 customers, you are in jeopardy of you lose one customer, and that's a big hit to your business, especially when you're running at a 4 or 5% return on investment, right? 4 or 5% of your net right there, it's gone. Okay, so I get blown away when people complain about this stuff because CGI is not only bringing jobs to the market, but they're bringing jobs to the market that require extremely technical training, right? And a lot of education. One of our biggest problems as a state is we've had the lowest requirement of jobs per capita with a college education, right? We had nothing but jobs that were turning wrenches and none of them that were typing behind keyboards. And so they are doing great things for the economy. Now, real quick, I happen to know the head of recruiting at CGI. It's a guy named Andy Dye. And Andy's a close personal friend, and he's a nervous man. And I've seen him, like, try to put together in his head how many people he has to get on board, right? And how he has to try and find these people because the average IT guy is not going to make it at CGI. I mean, it is some very technical programming. I feel for Andy right now. I know Andy's got a big job ahead of him, but I know he can get it done, and I'm proud of you. And look, back up real quick, last but not least, I'm going to touch on this, but I forgot about it. We talked about the Obamacare website. Yes, CGI did the Obamacare website. CGI is actually stationed out of Canada, right? We've had this discussion years ago when we talked about the Obamacare website, that sometimes things don't go well. But these guys are, I think they're either the largest or one of the largest code writing companies in the United States. We're lucky to have them here. The reason that they're here is because of fiber and because of some of our incentives, because our local people had enough foresight to say, let's invest in something that's going to make our community better in the form of LUS fiber. So this is great for our community. I'm glad to see that we're bringing even more families down here, and I hope that they stay, and I hope we can build a system that incentivizes them to stay, incentivizes more companies like them to come here and continue to grow and make our community better.
So, Carol, you've been involved, with various different either nonprofits or programs involving the university. University is a huge part of the community that we have here.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, you could feel it there yesterday when that announcement was made. You have to think the computer science department, who is turning out graduates like this, are like, awesome. They can just work on our North Campus.
There were multiple reasons for them to locate here. Among them, the tax incentives that we give away, building the building for $13.1 million and leasing it back to them for 1 year. They are a Canadian company, so it does have some other implications in terms of tax policy, et cetera. I don't know all the details, but I just hope that it's a longer term, that they are here longer than some of the other 10-year exemptions that have been given out, because as soon as the 10-year tax credit runs out, then they leave.
Yeah.
So I hope it is something more substantive than that. And of course, the real commitment was made by the state economic development in building the building for them. You'll have to dive down. You really need to dive down into some of these economic packages to see what the incentive is. That they're adding 400 jobs, that's a positive sign. And I do think, and that I've said this over and over again, even though some of my friends, the numbers don't really work on fiber, they really don't. If you're looking at it purely objectively, numbers to numbers, but as a marketing tool for this area to bring in these types of companies, tech companies, and to build our because we have a demographic bomb going on in Louisiana. Not a lot of people are looking long term, but we do, and we had the same thing in the 80s. People were leaving, young people were leaving, and so our population was aging, and that's really, you need to have a young, vibrant population here. So these tech companies are good for that. The question is, what are we giving away? How long? For how long? Will this be long-term? And by the way, is our tax structure so fundamentally screwed up in this state that we have to continually give these kinds of incentives that only undermine trust from a lot of people who don't get the incentives? And they're saying, why don't we all get the incentives? Well, the incentive would be to fix the tax code and make it reasonable for everyone. We are the highest taxed in terms of sales taxes. And yet a lot of people feel that way. I mean, they feel that that's the only way you're going to get some taxes out of some people.
As a follow-up, I want to ask you guys, because let's think about this too. If we're thinking long-term, we're thinking about now, but we're also thinking long-term. We have made this investment and these people are going to be here, right? Okay, so that's a great part. Yes, God, we hope they don't leave in 10 years. Shame on them if they do for taking advantage of us. But in the interim, for once, we can look to Texas and invite people who have left, our brothers and sisters, to come home. I would love if somebody from CGI would call my brother and say, hey, Mr. Richardson, we have this such and such a job. Why don't you come home? And I'm sure my sister-in-law would be happy too. Now, I'm going to follow that up by saying, do y'all remember the discussion about Bruce Foods? Because there was all this incentive to get these companies from, we're going to get all these companies from out of state. We're going to get global companies. We're going to get car manufacturers. And then the people left in the state who have been working for years and building their companies were left on the vine. So wouldn't it be good that we continue to invest in companies like this CGI? They're already here. Invest in what's already here. If we're going to give tax breaks to somebody, give tax breaks to the people who are already here.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's an old saying, if you want to, all right, let me get this right. If you sell to the classes, you'll live with the masses. If you sell to the masses, you'll live to the classes, right? And Bruce Foods is a great example of that. So anytime you have large-scale, not ultra-regional operations that can be moved, they're probably going to get moved, right? Car manufacturing is a great example of that. Shreveport tried to do it with Hummer, with the H3s years ago, and that collapsed. Bruce Foods, I think the only time that we've seen it actually really continue to stay around here is in the form of rice mills, right? Even our sugar mills don't get it to completely done and out, right? I can tell you, going door to door years ago for people that were running for office, I can't tell you how many new people I met who said they were here because their family moved here from CGI. And Lita has keyed into exactly what you're saying, Bernie. We reference those, or I say we. Lita references those. They call them boomerangs. They try to get people to come back to our community. It's why you see Festival have areas that cater to people or market to people who are coming back who grew up in Lafayette, who only come back for Festival, may not come back for Mardi Gras, and they try to cater to them while they're here. And we try to get those people back, people who got degrees that aren't oil field centric.
Yeah, let's get them in. Let's get them in the school. Get their kids in the schools, and that way they don't want to leave.
Well, and sometimes a lot of times they leave because our schools are crap.
Yeah, but you know what? We have in Lafayette decent schools compared to the rest of the state. Yeah, we got a lot to still work on. Okay, look. Warren's going to kill me if he doesn't get to jump in. He's
you were very close to us having to press the button. The red button down
Get
here.
your finger on the red button.
All right.
I'm so sick and tired of hearing people talk about the new technology and the keyboards and all of this, that, and other, and condemning and condemning the oil field at the same time. The oil field is nothing but high-tech industry, and it has been for years and years. Back in the 1980s, the number one use of supercomputers in the world was processing seismic data. You talk about 400 people coming here, and we jump up and we cheer and we cheer and we cheer. But how many times did we hang our head in shame because we had these places who were moving 400 people out of here?
But wait. The problem was, let me say this real quick. The problem is they're not hiring as many high-tech employees. They're hiring people to work on the rigs.
Okay, wait.
Who? No, listen, hush. This is what I want. This is what I want to address.
He's
Don't
angry.
get that man angry.
You damn right I am, because I want to set the record straight. And you talk about this is all
I never
because
vilified oil. I'm in the oil industry, Warren.
This is all because of... And you don't know the difference between Halliburton and Schlumberger and oil companies. And this is talking about fiber, and they're here because of fiber. There was tons of fiber in this community before fiber to the home arrived.
No, there wasn't.
Okay.
Oh, well, we're living in the Twilight Zone. But hold on.
There was a fiber loop.
Let's take this one step further. When those jobs left with the oil companies, when Chevron pulled out of here, when Shell pulled out of this state, when Exxon pulled out of this state, what did they take with them? The oil companies are engineers. They're PhDs in engineering.
They took their innovators. You're right.
Exactly right.
They took innovators. He's right.
What has CGI brought back with them? They're innovators.
All right, can I finish, please?
All he's saying, though, is exactly that. Your point is these people. Look, if you went up and down Highway 90, the reason there are so many millionaires in Lafayette and Acadiana is because of the oil and gas industry. Because people were engineers and they were innovators. They created technology for the rest of this country and the globe. That's the point.
That's
Warren's
not
trying
just
to make.
what I'm also saying. What I'm also saying is that they hired people. They hired engineers. They hired graduate engineers. They hired graduate mathematicians. You go there to Chevron, you go to any of those big companies in the oil and gas industry now, and that's all they hire. They're high-tech people. And as Bernie says, and they do innovate. And they have worked on that. You know, you look at CNC Technologies that were just purchased by Oceaneering. You know, that is high-tech industry.
And has been for a long time.
So do me a favor. Don't tell me I don't know anything about oil and gas.
I didn't
If you
say
don't
you didn't
know that
anything.
CNC was bought out by Fugro and before they were bought out by anybody else.
A lot of your
So let's take a step back.
wrong.
I did not vilify the oil industry. I work in the oil industry. I have worked in the oil industry more recently than you have. Okay, so let's get a couple things straight. I support the oil and gas industry. I support it heavily.
Are we going to get some fists thrown
I'm
here?
involved in the oil industry, and my living depends on it. Okay, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying diversifying our economy is good for it, Warren. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but when we diversified our economy, we got rid of the oil and gas segments in Louisiana. And you were talking about it's a good thing that we got rid of them.
We didn't do it to the detriment of...
Interpreted what you said.
That's not what I'm implying. And if it came off that way, I apologize.
Okay.
But let me make it clear.
All right.
I'm not supporting other industries and diversification and getting them here. I don't believe that that's at the detriment of somebody else. I think we have enough state laws in place to keep oil and gas here and natural resources.
All right, Carol, wrap this one up for us.
But fundamentally, we have a flawed political system that is not conducive to bringing people here. They don't look at Louisiana as an innovative state. They don't. Mm-hmm. And by the way, you know, all those years that we had oil and gas, it was because the technology was not there in terms of fracking. I mean, technology has made a big difference in the way we extract oil and gas. And so that has hurt Louisiana in certain ways because they used to say, well, where are they going to go to get, you know, they have to be here. Well, now they don't have to be here anymore.
They don't have to be.
They can, you know, so there are other challenges that we face. But I think basically we have to get our state fundamentally in line in terms of corruption, in terms of all these legacy lawsuits, because a lot of oil companies are not coming back because of that and have said so publicly.
All right, 7:47 now. We wrap up with Wingin' It Wednesday next.
Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by LABI, our state's Chamber of Commerce, defending free enterprise since 1974.
All right, we're going to go to our phone calls. You guys have been diligently waiting as we have had our we've had our conversation this morning about what's going on here. The governor's speech, also CGI, and of course those state tax incentives. All right, good morning, Sam. Go ahead with your comment. You're on Wingin' It Wednesday.
Yes, ma'am. I find it interesting that Warren got blasted for not knowing that CNC was bought by Fugro. I find that very interesting because CNC was never owned by Fugro.
Okay.
CNC was formed when Johnny Chance and Associates was bought by Fugro.
No. John Chance was bought by Fugro. CNC was bought by Oceaneering.
Then I was wrong.
Correct.
That's the Sun's company. Tommy Chance's company
correct.
is CNC.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go to
232-1542. Go ahead, John.
Good morning. Listen to your program just about every Wednesday and really enjoy it. I've got a comment I want to make about the what I see as the key to all of these problems in the state, and Warren finally hit on it at the beginning of the last segment. Education. And my philosophy is, if you keep them stupid, they vote for you forever. Because educated kids grow up to be educated voters, and they see right through what my uncle used to call tin-horn politicians. So if you don't have educated voters, you can pull the wool over their eyes anytime you want.
All right. Thank you, John.
Can I make one statement quick? And that is, we're talking about high-tech industries and education. When I came here in 1981, USL had the only one of two CAD/CAM operating departments in engineering or computer science in the United States, and that was a real big plus. And then something happened to that program, and anybody wants to say what happened to it, please let me know.
Mm-hmm. Go back to the phones, 232-1542. Go ahead, you're on Wingin' It Wednesday.
Hey, good morning, y'all.
Hi.
Morning.
Enjoying the show. I got my boxing gloves on.
Yes. Are you ready to throw a verbal punch? Because we are open to those today.
Well, one of the things that wasn't discussed that I still don't hear are these NGOs, all these organizations that are just sitting there like baby birds in the nest, and our politicians are just feeding them to make sure, like the guy said earlier, to keep the stupid people voting a certain way. And he hit the nail on the head. They built the pyramids with dumb and hungry people. They don't want an educated populace because then they can't control them.
What NGOs do you think are the biggest problems?
The Purple Circle Social Club. Can we go down the list? I'm sure all those NGOs are still out there active, waiting for their handouts from their politicians. Did we ever get a new list of the NGOs?
No, but it's available online.
But a lot of those NGOs also have contracts with the government, too.
Yeah, thank you.
And they employ maybe a nephew of a legislator, or maybe they're a community center that's staffed by
but then
a
you
cousin
might have some
of a legislator.
You might have some mixed in there though that actually do good work. And so that's why the whole.
But right now, the only criteria is who you're connected to.
But the military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan are full of NGOs.
So I'm going to drop a grenade in the whole conversation and say, like,
You're
that's
good at
very small percentage of what our government. While it is something that should be addressed, a very small percentage of our state government. And when we look at like federal government spending issues, and we yell like welfare is the problem, entitlements, and all that kind of stuff. And you look at what percentage of the budget goes to our military, and you go, hey, maybe we shouldn't be at war all over the place. Maybe we should stop buying missiles all the time. So that's my grenade in the conversation.
The entitlements and the domestic spending to the military. Trust me, the entitlements far outweigh. And by the way, this whole fiscal cliff was created by the governor in his expansion of Medicaid.
But the point is, though, Stafford, is how much of that military budget goes to NGOs. There is a tremendous amount of it.
I don't know,
but it's a lot.
Well, guys, we're always very thankful to have you guys and your comments each and every week.
Have a great week. Great.
Love to have you guys all together.
Go Cajuns! Go Cajuns!
Say that again.
Go Cajuns! Go Cajuns!
We are y'all not tired?
Are you gonna?
I don't know.
We eliminated a commercial break because of Chatty Cathy Warren today.
I don't know if the show's over. We just went out our welcome.
Well, there's a reason the show's only once a week. But anyway, you can hear Carol this afternoon on the Ross Report at 2:00, and they will join us, of course, again next week on Wednesday.
Cajuns,
thanks, guys. Appreciate
Free
it.
tuna on Stafford. Yeah. Oh, wait. Can we say that real quick? Congratulations on your super fishing expedition.
Yeah, he caught his fantasy fish, which I never knew what this even was. Sounds like something kinky to me. But anyway, his fantasy fish is a yellowfin tuna, and he caught it.
It was weird wheeling it up.
How many pounds?
We weren't able to put it on a scale, but we estimated 145.
Good job.
It was over 5 feet long.
So we have a chunk of it in the
like
refrigerator for breakfast.
We
so.
do.
I could show you pictures. Believe me, I ain't making that up.
All right, and on that note, northwest of Angelin Thruway at Donlin and I-10 westbound mile marker 102, traffic brought to you by Wasabi, now at the corner of Ambassador and Kali's Saloon. All you can eat made to order from the menu, over 200 items, including sushi, pizza, appetizers, soups, and more. Wasabi at the corner of Ambassador Caffrey and Kali's Saloon behind O'Reilly. Daniel Phillips saying 40% of our area will have to deal with some thunderstorm activity for today. A high temperature at 91 and partly cloudy skies. Right now, 72.
News Talk 96.5, KPEL, Breaux Bridge, Lafayette. Online at KPEL 96.5.